So today we're going to kick it off with a more big picture conversation around what AI means for business. Now that's a really big question, but thankfully we have Votini Agrafiotti here from the Royal Bank of Canada and also head of Borealis AI. And then we have Satvinder Singh from the London Stock Exchange to kick us off. Now I know it's a really big overarching question, but as you kind of think about this outside of perhaps your role, kind of as a person in a business that does have commercial interests, you also think about the societal risks. Where do you think AI is kind of heading? What do you think it means for corporations that are really wading into the space right now? Why don't we start with you, Votini?
It's interesting because we started investing in AI, I think, like in a serious way about 7-8 years ago. And I think we were amongst the few banks at the time that really saw the potential of bringing state-of-the-art machine learning into our business at that point. And the reason why we looked at that capability more strategically at the time was because we recognized that, like many other industries, banks are data-driven. We run about 2,000, 3,000, last count was number of models across the enterprise every day, making decisions with data on behalf of our clients. And so the ability to lift that performance, increase accuracy, bring more safety and transparency into that process was paramount for our future. There was also a bit of an existential risk for our industry in that banks have been around for a long time. More and more we see competition come from the tech sector, recognizing that these are companies that know how to build beautiful experiences with technologies, and certainly at the core of those lies beautiful AI. And so if that's the world we're heading into, and we certainly are in that world already, how do we compete? How do we ensure that we sustain our advantage as an industry, that we remain relevant for our clients? And so we started investing in building our own capabilities for that reason exactly, and building our own intellectual property and growing a more sustainable competitive advantage. And I think that was very strategic. In terms of impact on society, I think it's, through banks, like you touch some of more core aspects of people's lives. And so with the investment, it also came the responsibility that we recognized we had along the way of, okay, AI at times tends to be a black box, especially the type of AI you really want to use to increase accuracy in a meaningful way. And so where do you draw the line? How do you decide which one are you going to opt in for, which one are you going to forego if you put your client first and communities where you operate in first? So many important decisions along the way that I think you bow that up, like it does move society, and I think a lot of banks think responsibly about how we deploy AI gladly. It's not just a regulatory requirement. I think we heard a lot about regulation as being a constraint or a reason why we do business in a certain way. But I would say that's table stakes. A lot of the time it's, okay, here's what we are allowed to do in our regulatory environment, but there's also our client's expectation that sits on top of that. Even if we're allowed to do X, are our clients expecting that we would do that for them? Is that okay? And it's interesting to be doing that through a business that doesn't really look to reinvent its business model. We're not having conversations about are we selling our data or not. Like, this is not where we are as a business.
You bring up a great point in that artificial intelligence in banking has been around for quite some time, and we heard that even just in the last conversation. But clearly something has changed over the last 12 to 18 months, and Satvinder, I'd love your perspective on this. What is exciting you the most that makes you think this time is actually different?
First of all, let me thank the organizers. It's great to be here. It's also great to just feel the energy. I mean, I was here a bit earlier, but over breakfast, over coffee, just to meet so many people who feel really passionate about this topic. I know each one of us represents organizations, and we have tens of thousands of people in the industry that are passionate about it, but to see senior leadership here, wanting to share, wanting to learn, wanting to really see how the future takes us forward, right? Amazing. So thank you for that. I actually think we're at a particular inflection point on AI. If you look at the future, if you look at the present, if you look at the past, it's difficult not to get excited, but within reason. for quite some time, whichever version of this you want to talk about, but it's been there for a long, long, long time. We've used it as a tool earlier on, so it's helped us do things. Now we think it's going to be a co-worker. So we will work along with AI. It will help us, almost human-like ability to understand language, reason, throw out conclusions, which obviously the human part of us will analyze and drive decisions. But in the not so distant future, this could actually be a co-innovator with us. It pushes the human limits out and allows us to really focus on real innovation, which allows efficiencies to flow through the system, which allows us to really, as humans, focus on where we're going to add the most value. And there's a lot of things we've all done together as an industry. There's a particular partnership we have with Microsoft that's going to help us, I think, really scale the impact of AI in financial services. It's a particular industry I'm very passionate about. I think there's tons of use cases that we currently already have, but there's so much more we can do. And as I talk to customers, and we spend a lot of our time talking to customers about where they are on this journey, there's a bit of a spectrum. One end of the spectrum is fear, and the other end is optimism. And the fear part, and this is not a judgment, this is just where people are. Right? This is where organizations are. And I think it comes across in the index as well. Fear is really about, will we not remain competitive? Will we not drive efficiencies? Could we eventually get disintermediated? So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is really optimism. How do I drive more value? How do I create an expanded target market? How do I become more relevant in this space? And how do we use this technology and embrace it rather than look at it with fear and sort of cynicism? So I think the future is really promising. And it's also an amazing time for all of us as leaders in this space, whatever our individual backgrounds may be. I think in a decade or so, most of us, if we're still around in the industry, will look back and say we've been part of an amazing journey. And it's a privilege to be here. So thank you for that.
One of the insights that came out of the first discussion this morning was that Canadian banks are actually pretty ranked highly. And I think back to where a lot of the talent has come from in artificial intelligence and from Canadian universities. And you're an alumni as well from one of them. But when you think about what you're doing at Borealis AI, this research arm that the bank has, how do you think about your responsibility in building not just these practical use cases for banking, but also at the foundational level, building models of your own? Where do you think that responsibility differs than from a bank who's just kind of buying this off the shelf, perhaps?
Well, it's true. So I think a lot of Canadian businesses, certainly banks, have benefited from a thriving ecosystem in Canada, especially on the science side. Our academics had done quite well on the deep learning and reinforcement learning. A lot of these innovations came out of Canadian schools. It's interesting because back in 2017, as we were trying to recruit people into the bank from these top schools, people that had put their names down, first authors, second authors, on one of the most disruptive papers, if you may, in the field, most of them were looking to leave the country after they would graduate their PhDs. And there wasn't a lot of thought about what would I do in Canada. And it was a fair question. There wasn't a ton of interesting industrial work, opportunity for people to pursue their research outside academia within Canadian soil. And so something that we did, I think, quite well in the country was that we all recognized we share a problem here, and we leaned in to solve it. So the Pan-Canadian AI strategy led by the federal government, together with the industry, together with academics, we created institutes across the country that really helped educate and prepare the next generation of AI scientists that came into the market. And a lot of the time we confuse that talent with data science, and we kind of use the term interchangeably. But in reality, the people that built GPT were not data scientists. They were AI experts, people that could advance the science of AI. And so for us, the decision to invest in R&D, and we did so by building something on the edge of the bank, operationally independent, so that it doesn't get too sucked into our culture and traditional way of doing business, was very simple. We did not want to be on the backseat of that innovation. And so when you think about where AI goes, As a scientist, when I try to implement a new algorithm, I will normally test it on language data or image data. And why that is, it's because it makes it easy for you to look at the results, inspect very quickly, and you know where you're doing well or not. So all of the new algorithms, all of the new innovation comes for that specific data domain. Banks have data that are so vastly different from that, and someone needs to do the work to now take that innovation and translate that into the domain that is most meaningful to our business. And so the question for us was, do we want to be on the backseat and wait for others to do that and start thinking about how do I take anomaly detection for self-driving vehicles and move that into, translate that and build a fraud detection system for credit cards, for instance. So this is similar technologies, but you either take the back seat and buy that once somebody makes that transfer, or you are on the front line and make that transition yourself. That's what it allowed us to do. We're not new to AI because of GPT. We didn't come to it in the last year. We've been at it for a very long time. I think it helped us accelerate what we did with large language models in the last year because we had these investments early on. We had the people that understood how the technologies run at the deepest, most level. And I'll emphasize that because many times it's thought that because with prompt engineering, a little bit of fine-tuning, it's so easy that anyone can bring this in and build a solution. It's true, you can prototype things very easily, but to build commercial production-grade AI system, it takes more than prompt engineering, especially in our sector, especially with the requirements that we have around safety and security for our clients. Treating AI as a black box is not an option, so you better have people in the enterprise that know what's going on in these models. They're not data scientists, they're not prompt engineers, they're AI experts.
What are some of the difficult conversations you're having with perhaps leadership who, of course, wants to stay competitive, has commercial interests, and I'm sure it does inform your work in some ways, but you know what's going on underneath the models and inside the algorithms. Do you ever find pushback versus, from going a little too quickly versus kind of paring it back to make sure it's tweaked and fine-tuned properly?
It's not so much pushback as much as you come as a technologist into a bank, at some point you're hit with the realization that going to market is just not as fast, as efficient as in the tech sector. And so early on, you got to think about if I'm successful in that research investment, if there's a solution that is production grade that can come out of that, how would I even go about bringing that to market? What are the additional requirements? And so a lot of the times we will pause, not for regulatory reasons. Again, that's the bare minimum requirement here. It's our clients' expectations. Just to give you an example, one of our landmark products is Aiden. It's an electronics trading system that uses reinforcement learning techniques. So we invested in bringing reinforcement learning into equities trading early on, back when it was thought to be just a science for gaming. And we kind of saw the connection of games, the stock market formulates itself as a game as well in many ways, so much more complex. The stakes are so much higher. So how do we take that science and bring it into that domain? So big leap of faith and a lot of effort from our side. But we also knew that if we are ever to go to market with a product like this, we also have to understand that our clients' expectation is that we will be able to rationalize the trades that this AI is making. So what do we do today? When we sit on the trading desk, we'll answer the call and say, this is why our algorithm traded in this or that way. We should be able to explain this in real time. And so together with Aiden, we built a sister product almost in research mode from the get-go of a sister AI that would rationalize the decisions that the first AI is making. So you have that explainability hand in hand as you go to market. These are not really requirements that are there for every sector, certainly present for financial services.
It's almost interesting that it's the opposite, or at least right now it seems to be like this black box approach, and other areas of Silicon Valley, that it's almost a competitive advantage for explainability not to be there, for it to kind of be this way to insulate yourself from people figuring out what you can actually do. But in financial services, it's almost embedded. You need to have it. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's a requirement that you're transparent with your clients about how you make decisions on their behalf. And frankly, this is where, in thinking about talent and what attracts talent to our industry, that's part of the reason as well. Like as the impact of AI on society has come to, we came to realize that that's going to be much bigger than what we had originally thought 5-10 years ago. People start to appreciate doing the opportunity to do so in a more respectful way. I don't go to bed at night thinking that what I'm building may mess up society in one way or another. I have a very strong belief in our processes, in our controls, and that sets us apart. And I think the entire industry is the same way.
Satvinder, I'd love to get your thoughts on what risks that are arising around artificial intelligence, whether that's bias or others, hallucinations, for example, kind of impact the way you think about applying it in your role.
I think, can I just go back to something we just spoke about? I think it's really important to understand that if we're not careful with AI, and if it's not used appropriately, we'll make the same wrong decisions, but with greater confidence. And that is scary. And we'll genuinely believe that the answer is the right answer, even though it's the wrong answer. And we'll believe it's the right answer because somebody pushed it out. So that's my preface to the question you've just asked, because we spend a lot of our time trying to get this right? For us, it's really clear about how do you manage this risk. We've been spending a lot of our time with our customers saying, how do we make sure the modeling that we're doing around this is the right modeling? We've done, in my mind, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a gold standard, again, working with Microsoft, the gold standard for what this looks like from a data rights perspective, from a data governance perspective, from a lineage perspective, what we call data trust. So as one of the world's largest institutions that manage capital markets data, really, really important. As we use AI, we've got the lineage, we've got the traceability, we know what source we've worked on, we've got the rights management to this, because a lot of this stuff really depends on getting the basics right. If you do not have the basics right, you can have the best modeling, but the model's going to throw out, as they say, garbage in, garbage out. So for us, it's really been about spending a lot of our time, not just getting excited about the front end, which a lot of people talk about. What's the model? What's the applicability? How much efficiency can you draw? How much pain can you take out of the system? How many wonderful workflows can you create? But also looking below the surface, because below the surface ensures you'll get it right. It will ensure that the right data is being used, the right models being used, the right lineage is there, the right traceability is there. And therefore, we're not making the same mistakes with greater confidence. That is not a great place for the industry to be in. And for LSEG, again, hugely important topic. We take this responsibility very seriously. We're spending a lot of our time getting the basics right, because I think that will ensure that the foundation is strong and we build on it really well.
When you mentioned Microsoft as a partner that you're working with, I'm sure many folks in this audience are also taking that partnership approach. What's on your kind of rubric, your list of criteria that you look for in a partner, whether that's being at the cutting edge, of course, but also at the talent level, at how they're working with regulators? What other things are you looking for before you vet them?
So I think it's really important that the skills are complementary, number one. So in any partnership, there are two things we will bring to the table. One is our data, and in a lot of instances, we have data going back decades, if not longer. Right? So financial capital markets data, we link up to more than 500 multi-asset venues. We have 300 plus billion transactions happening throughout our systems on a daily basis. So we're very proud of what we have. So that's number one. The second thing we genuinely believe LSEG brings to the table is knowledge of how financial markets work in terms of the talent we have. Most of them are ex-bankers, traders, asset managers, so they know the industry. So they not only understand the data, they also understand the relevance and the value of that data and how to connect dots. So those are what we bring to a partnership. So what we're looking for example, in the partnership we have with Microsoft, we believe their commitment to this space, number one. their values align with ours, but also the technology they have and the talent they have is an amazing mix. So the feedback we're getting from our customers is if you look at the combination of technology, platform, cloud infrastructure, innovation, AI, amount of money spent, Microsoft brings that. The data side of financial services, the knowledge of the industry, the connectivity, we bring that. That's an amazing partnership. Because then we can bring to our customers, our joint customers, the best of where financial services is today, but also put a roadmap for what the future looks like. And for us, that's it's actually been, I've been in this job 4 months, so as you can see, I'm a veteran. But for us, it's been a journey. It's like explain to people, show the vision, then get people to believe in it, and then showcase it in terms of what it's really going to feel like and how people's lives are going to change, what sort of efficiencies we're going to bring into the system. So one example, I'm maybe Claire, you're bringing it up later on, but Microsoft is partnering with us, or we're partnering with them as well, on something called meeting preparation. Now, I challenge you, anybody in this room, if you have a senior meeting coming up with somebody as a customer, it takes a lot of time. You may not be doing it, but your teams are like busy, maybe even a week before, pulling up the last call report, pulling up all the information on the company, and that's a lot of work that goes into it. So that the 2-page or the 3-page or the 5-page that you eventually get, there's a significant amount of work that's gone into it. Now, everybody's worst nightmare is something big happens just before the meeting. So, your briefing notes come in, it's all ready, it's all prepared. A day before, there's an announcement. That changes quite a few of the topics that you're going to discuss. Now, imagine a world, and again, I'm using the word imagine because I think it's a really powerful world because we are sometimes limited by our own imagination. So if your imagination is bold and big, you'll get there over time. But imagine a world where you can press a button and it has access to all the financial data that we have on a company, all the reports, all the annual reports, all the filings, all the transcripts, everything that's ever been said in an investor presentation, along with everything that's in the Microsoft suite of products. And it brings it together. So one is collection of data. The second part is the visualization of it. And then the human part of all of us is left to the analysis and actually having the meeting rather than having to spend time prepare for the meeting. So I'd much rather, if I have bandwidth of 1 to 10, today I think 1 to 8 goes into the preparation and 9 to 10 goes into actually thinking through what I'm going to say, how we're going to react, trying to achieve, how is this going to be a win-win, how do we collectively grow together, all those things. That's the 9 to 10. But in a future world where all of that is a press of the button, and my bandwidth is actually on what I do best, which is think about how we're going to work together, how we will turn this relationship, and how we're going to look at future opportunities. That's an amazing opportunity for all of us. And it's difficult not to get excited by that. So I think that's what the partnership brings, something that you don't have, but it doesn't dilute what you have.
When we talk about business, I think it's very easy to kind of get caught up in the jargon of what that all means, but who it's actually impacting kind of ends up almost being a secondary thought sometimes. I would love your thoughts, Vatini, on how artificial intelligence will impact kind of the links between business and technology, but ultimately the people, the customers, the clients that it's affecting. I don't know if you have any more specific examples of how we can kind of expect this technology to really, affect everyday folks.
So in terms of just to focus it on generative AI, because I know that's top of mind for everyone, we do not feel, like many others, that the technology is ready for prime time. If I define prime time as something that would be client-faced in the near term. A number of concerns, I think we're all quite aware of those, and we're working our way through that. And so we don't expect to see a lot of banking clients interacting with a chatbot to get financial advice in 2024. We're trying to understand, though, genuinely understand, if that is the world where we are headed, where do you draw the line? What type of conversations are you comfortable handing off to an autonomous agent versus where do you redirect it to the human? And so as we're studying that, we're building experimental test beds, if you may, that lead us to that world. And step number 1 is do so with human oversight. So address that risk in the back office as we're answering calls, as we're taking in questions from our clients in real time. We're we're productionizing Gen AI that supports our agents in navigating complex policies and procedures. So taking that context from the client, who they are, what their service needs are today, also with an entire corpus of procedures and policies that are very complex that the banking system sits on, and kind of like getting them to the right answer very quickly. And so we're prompting the agent, and we're kind of like looking to see how often does the human agent opt in to use a generative output from the machine, when do they not, and kind of like learn from that experience. Immediate productivity gains. Like the call handling time, it's a direct metric out of that, and we know that seconds matter, especially on that side of our business. Cutting costs is extremely important. That's one area in research. In our capital market side, we see a lot of opportunity for very similarly allowing our analysts and their associates to compile reports very quickly. Again, looking forward to a world where we could offer a solution in front of our clients that they could query RBC research on any company automatically on their desks. But again, concerns about hallucinations is one step at a time. To be frank, though, I'm more excited, not so much, and I'm looking forward to the day that we stop talking about LLMs, and I'm asked about the real value of foundation models in banking, because banks, if you look at our entire data assets, language data, we got a ton of that for sure. But our core asset is transactions and market data and risk and fraud, and that's where the core of our business lies. And so foundation models as a science is extremely interesting in how do you build large transaction models that have the same generalization ability as what LLMs have today. So the same way in LLM, you can prompt it to be your chef or your therapist or your tutor. A large transaction model can be prompted to, you use that and it generalizes across your business. It can adjudicate for you. It can price a banking product. It can understand your risk tolerance. And so we're moving towards a world where we have foundation models behind servicing all of our client needs and treating clients consistently across the enterprise. We've been at this for the last 3 years. We've already seen a lot of success with that. And that, again, goes back into why invest in R&D, right? Like GPT is not new science. It's just that chat was put in front of that and the world noticed. Like if you paid attention to research, transformers had been there for a long time. We knew how to build foundation models, and we've been accelerating that path for the assets in our businesses that matter the most.
Satvinder, do you think some of these language models, some of these AI applications are ready for prime time in your work?
I think you've got to be careful. I love this quote. I will not attribute it to where it needs to be attributed to, but somebody said, with great power comes great responsibility. So, and we've got to be very careful here that there's a tremendous amount of power in AI adoption. We've already seen the benefits of that. I read a report last week which said, depending on the sector, there are significant implications on workflows productivity. And in financial services, they think, again, depending on the subsegment within that, up to 40%. That we can sort of generate efficiencies. And obviously all of that will then go into future growth, more innovation, more thinking through what more we can do. So that's really, really powerful. So I think being conscious of that, doing it very responsibly, doing it aligned with the regulators, making sure we're not doing anything that we will regret. Again, going back to make sure we're doing the right things with confidence rather than making the same mistakes with a degree of confidence that is higher than before. So all of those, if you get that foundation right, there's a tremendous opportunity to build on this. And again, the word of caution there is make sure we're using the right models for the right use cases with the right data sets. All of that significantly important. So if you get the basics right, the right data, the right lineage, the right models, the right outcomes, have a check and balance in it, in sync with the regulators, in sync with what our customers are trying to do, it is already so pervasive. If I look at LSEG, we're using AI in operations, technology, in our sales organization, in our customer support teams. We're using it obviously for product differentiation. We're working with partners many partners to say, how does that innovation play out from a customer lens perspective? Because our customers are coming to us and saying, look, we need help. We need help with our databases. We need help with the work we're doing with AI. We need help with our data rights. So we, I think, collectively here, particularly all the winners in the index, we have a responsibility, I think, to democratize a lot of this, to be able to teach others what the value of this is truly capable of providing to the rest of the financial services, that being one industry, but other industries as well. And if we do it collectively, I think we'll end up in the right place.
It's a great note to end on. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.